Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast, dedicated to parents and anyone else who loves someone in active addiction. Education is a powerful tool in breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and ultimately helping individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges of addiction. With Donna Marston, author of Peeling the Onion and Sharing Without Shame. So take a deep breath and grab some tissues as we uncover the stories of love, courage, and unwavering support in the face of adversity, as Donna and her guests share their stories without shame. Because when we share our stories without shame, we inspire others to do the same.
Hello and welcome. Today I will be talking to Elizabeth Chance, who is a health and wellness coach and the host of the podcast Busy Living Sober. Elizabeth's story isn't about overcoming obstacles, it's about resilience, self-discovery, and the strength to rebuild her life. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Donna, for inviting me on your show. I love what you're doing. I love that you're helping others. That's my passion. I don't want anybody to ever feel alone. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for coming on. I've been really excited to meet you, and just it's a painful journey when we love somebody who has a substance use disorder, and I just never want anybody to feel the way that I felt. So, I made it a commitment many years ago when my son got sober that you keep him sober and I will pay it forward, and that's what I do. So,
I love that. I love that.
thank you.
Because
So,
before we start taping, I have to tell everybody who's out there that's listening, is that Donna's a great resource because I think there aren't as many resources for the actual family.
right,
And this disease is a family disease. It
absolutely.
affects everyone. And me being the addict, I always thought, oh no, I'm fine. It's all about me. I'm the only one ingesting this and I'm not hurting anybody else. But in
Mm,
fact, I was hurting so many other people.
mhm.
And I think that what you're doing so that people know that they can come and they can reach out and not be spoken at, but to be
Yeah.
listened to,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
huge. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I never want anyone to feel the way I felt. And I was dismissed so much. People would tell me, just go away. You're just the mother. And we have a voice, and it's our babies. I don't care how old they are. They're our babies. And when they're sick and suffering, what do we do? We nurture. That's our goal. So anyway, as we get started, the first question I always like to ask is, what would you like to share without shame?
Well, for one, I haven't had a drink in almost 18 years, which is crazy. And I am still an alcoholic.
Hmm. What does that mean when you say that? Because you've been abstinent.
I've been abstinent for almost, it'll be August 14, 2006 was my last drink. And I say that because it's kind of like it's part of me. I believe that this is it's a gene with this that's in me. Once you become a pickle, you can't go back to being a cucumber. So I will continue being that pickle. I just don't partake in the alcohol. But my thinking is
Mm.
what really gets me. My thinking is like I can still spiral today sometimes. I mean, right now I've been going through for about I guess it's almost 2 years now. My oldest son, met a woman and we were thick as thieves. I mean, I drove cross country with him. I was a single mom for a very long time. And he met a woman and it was like, bye, mom. That's it. See you later. You've done your job. I'm off. You go just, I mean, luckily I do have two other children that still talk to me, but that has been, it's still staying diligent. I still, as a person in recovery, have life things. My mother passed away during COVID. My best friend was murdered. My
Oh,
first boyfriend was in a drunk driving accident. I mean, then my son got married on New Year's and didn't invite me. And
mm.
all of these things are huge feelings, right?
Sure.
Huge
Absolutely.
feelings. And I think back to when I was drinking and I started drinking at 13
Wow.
and from 13 to 37.
Wow.
So during those years, I wasn't always like what you would call an alcohol. I mean, I don't know if you would, but I always had a problem with alcohol. And whenever I got in trouble, alcohol was involved. And for me, it was my medicine. It was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to feel. This is so great. And I didn't know. Now, both of my grandmothers were alcoholic. One was Irish Catholic, one was Jewish. Now, you don't think like my parents talked about them like they alcoholics, they're alcoholics. Oh my,
The
there was
silent
no,
generation.
it is exactly. And and especially for women,
Yeah,
there was no solution.
that's
So
right.
I didn't realize that this DNA, and I believe it is a family disease. So for me, might have skipped a generation of my parents and it hit me. And
Hmm.
those feelings that didn't want to feel. My parents had a tumultuous divorce, just a lot of changes happened when I was young that I had no control over. And those feelings, of course, are big. Kept me a drink. Oh, it makes it better.
Yeah.
So when I continue to stay sober on this journey, all these feelings of like, oh my God, they don't like me. Oh my gosh, he hates me. He doesn't want to ever talk to me again. I can go on with a litany of adjectives and verbs and nouns to describe how I'm feeling. But to make those feelings go away, the easy answer would have been like, oh, go pour yourself a drink,
Right.
pour me a
Yeah.
drink. But it's not the solution for my problem ever.
So what is your coping skill when you're having those emotions and they're taking over? What tools do you have in your toolbox to move forward being abstinent?
Donna, what a great question. For me, I was a member of the 12 steps group of AA for a very, very, very long time. That's where I started my journey. And, I got a sponsor right away. I went into a meeting and I picked somebody that she was a mom. She had 3 kids, but
Hmm.
she had gone to the University of Pennsylvania. I had gone to like this small college. It's not part of GW, but she had gone to this prestigious Ivy League school and had these 3 kids and had been sober a long time. Her drug of choice was not the same as mine, but she had this hope in her eyes and she taught me, she walked me through the steps. That was my first sponsor. And then I got another sponsor for 10 more years. And, walking through all of that, we walked through and, I did my first step, admitting I'm powerless over alcohol. I could identify that because I realized looking back, if I had 1 sip, I always had 47. That was just my thing, right? I couldn't, there was no stop. And then step 2, coming to believe in a power greater than myself, which was like, I've always had some sort of religion in my life, always.
Hmm.
And so God is a big deal for me. I always have known that there's a God. And so that was huge. Step 3 was really hard for me because I had to, let go and trust that power and trust that power. And that is what I do to this day. That I over a decade, I would be like, that is the hardest step. I still tell some of the girls I work with, like, this is by far the hardest step because especially with children, you're like, I can turn my neighbor Bob over to you. I can even maybe turn my husband over to you. But these
Right.
3 people that I gave birth to,
Yeah.
I don't think
No
no,
way.
no bueno, no bueno.
Yeah.
And so they'd be like, "Oh, no, you have to let go."
Mm.
And, now looking back, because time is such a great gift because it gives us the ability to look backwards. I was a helicopter mom. I was one of those moms that was like, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then you're going to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. That's why with this whole thing with my son, this is not part of my script. Wait a minute. I'm not supposed to have this sort of life.
Right. Right.
And I do.
Yeah.
So then you take it on further, and 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8, and 9 are all about, personal things, going through
Yep.
what I had done in my past, making amends with people. 10, 11, and 12, the prayer and meditation are like huge for me, huge. And giving it away, I obviously do that with my podcast and the women I work with. But, when I was first getting sober, they're like, you need to meditate. And I'd be like, well, that's not happening. I'm like a pinball in a pinball machine. Meow, 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 meow. I had 3 little kids. My oldest was 10, the next one was 8, and the next one was 6. So, I had a busy life. I was single mom.
Yeah.
So I was like, you've got school, you've got after school sports, you have all these things. Making dinner was like chicken surprise is coming again. So I was, getting to that place where it was like, you're going to just sit and have feelings. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to be like, oh, with my hands out and looking in this total posture that's just totally uncomfortable and not able to do it. So I went to Penn myself and took a class in mindfulness and meditation. And there I learned that was my first step. And then I did Deepak Chopra's courses and
I
I've
love
gone
him.
on. Yes, I love him. And I continue. Meditation is a huge part of my life.
Hmm.
Every single solitary day I meditate. There's not a day. It's like breathing for me. I have to do it. And so when those thoughts come of like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough,
Yeah.
they don't like me, all those negative things, and I let them float by like, a cloud. And I realize that it's everything in God's world happens for a reason. And I might not know the reason today, but it's happening right now. And
Hmm.
I have to let go to it.
Yeah. You know, so even though I don't have a substance use disorder, I've experienced the steps as they're laid out in the big book with my step study sponsor. And the reason I did it is because I was a nosy, controlling mother. And my son was 3 years into his recovery and decided he was going to do the step work. And I was like, well, what's that all about? And he told me, and he went with his sponsor was a much older man, which
Hmm.
concerned me. And so it's like I want to find out what those people are doing with my baby boy. So I found a sponsor, and she did it the AA way, even though she was into Al-Anon. And she took me in, and the greatest gift I learned was nobody has to live up to my expectations. Now that pissed me off, but it was a great gift that I could release that piece, right? Letting go of the control and, letting those people take him and take him through this process, which I think everybody should go through.
Oh, it's an amazing,
Whether
I
you have an
mean,
SUD or not, everybody should go through the steps.
yeah, I agree. I mean, when I was first getting sober, I mean, this is why I started doing all of my, everything that I've been doing for so long. I've had my podcast for 7 years. And it's all God divine intervention. Because
Hmm.
at first I was a certified, I got certified as a recovery coach because a friend of mine I grew up with in St. Louis said, you should become a recovery coach. I'm like, oh, okay, I did that. And then I started giving talks in my town about like, oh my gosh, everybody should do this. Well, I was like, nobody wants to go hear this lady talk. I was like inviting the Grim Reaper to the old age home. Nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. So I would just go and I'd give these talks. And then somebody said to me, why don't you, a marketing firm that actually, this woman took me on pro bono and gave me this life and this whole new direction. Her staff said, why don't you start a podcast? I'm like, 7 years ago, what's a
Wow.
podcast? Yeah. And the craziest thing is I've never stopped doing it. My youngest son, who's now 24, I'm always like, Henry, I'm just going to quit. I don't think I should keep doing this. I don't even know how many followers I have. I don't even know if anybody's listening to this. This is just so, it's like, Mom, don't ever stop. Mom,
Yeah.
don't ever stop. And so that's my way of giving back. That's that 12th step for me,
Hmm.
because I feel like today, it's a different world than when I got sober.
Oh, absolutely.
And I talk about it all the time. It's like when I was getting sober, one of the main jobs was cleaning ashtrays. You could smoke cigarettes in the rooms and everything else. Now it's like against the law to smoke in some states, but you can buy marijuana anywhere you want and it's legalized. I mean, it is totally different. People are getting sober on Zoom. They're not even
Yeah.
experiencing, now there's all these different ways to get sober. There's this sober curious movement. There is sober cis. There's all these different ways that people, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of those women who don't even want to say, they don't want to use the word alcoholic because it has such a bad connotation.
Right.
So
Yep.
it's changed so dramatically along this past almost 18 years. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so I've been writing this blog called The Evolution of Addiction, and it's amazing when you look at the from the silent generation to the baby boomers and generation, I think it's X, millennials, and the Generation Z, where it was like, we don't talk about that, don't make waves. The baby boomers, you know, don't tell anybody. Let's keep our secret. But as the generations go on, they're very open. But
Oh,
I do hear this a lot, that a lot of the younger generation, they don't want to go to AA and NA because they don't want to be labeled the rest of their lives.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Which, and it's kind of funny. And by the way, I'm getting red because I'm having one of those hot flashes in my life. I don't know if you've gone through that in your life, but I'm just like, oh my
way
God,
past it.
oh, I can't wait for it to be over. But it's so interesting because again, young people today are not even they're not drinking as much as my generation.
That's right.
And the other thing that I found that was so interesting, because I loved seeing my mom drinking because it was so pretty. I mean, back when I was born in 1968, so my parents had cocktail parties all the time. So your mom got dressed, was in a pretty dress. Her
Yeah,
hair was done. She had
that's right.
lipstick on. All the good china's out. Everybody's drinking from the pretty glass. That's when everybody had Waterford, and you had to have your prettiest glasses, and everybody's walking around with their beautiful glasses, and they're happy. They're with their friends.
Hmm.
I can't wait to be a grown up. You'd watch movies with like Joan Crawford or somebody with like that's done up just beautifully in an like, elegant gown and a beautiful handbag. I mean, I'm girly. I've always been girly. I've got a million pairs of shoes, tons of handbags. I love that stuff. So
Right,
for me, I was like, I can't wait to drink. That's what grown-ups do.
right.
And today, and I'm not poo-pooing anybody, I'm not making any judgments now, but no moms were given drugs, really. Like, moms were not sent home and going, "Oh, you're depressed. Mommy's depressed, so let's give her an antidepressant." I didn't see my mom or any moms around me going around. They might drink and they might smoke cigarettes, but none of them were popping these
Right,
antidepressants or whatever they were, right? Maybe they would take diet pills, but that would be it, right? It wasn't like they'd go to the doctor and come home with this litany of like CVS bags, living at Walgreens. None of that stuff was going on when I was little.
right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and kids are now being given Adderall at such a young age.
Hmm.
Like they think that this whole drug world is a normal thing where you and I, it's kind of new. We're like, what do you mean you have to take a drug for this? You have to take a drug for like nobody did that when we were growing up.
Yeah, if our boyfriend broke up with us, we felt our pain.
Exactly.
Now, kids today, they put them on an antidepressant. They don't get to feel their feelings.
No.
It's really a shame.
It's fair. The whole world is so, it's like they don't want you to have any feelings. You've got to be moving at such a speed rate that you don't even know where you are half the time. These phones, I don't know if this is on video as well. I don't know if you put on YouTube, but these phones are keeping us sick. They're making us sick, right? In many ways. And the social media is just horrendous. I mean, I have friends that are, contemporaries of mine, and they will go on Facebook and they'll see these pictures of fellow moms that you thought your kids were friends, but you weren't invited to this party, and they're all out at this party having a glamorous time, and you weren't included. And you're like,
Mhm.
what? And like that, when we were growing up, if you weren't invited to a party, not you didn't know, and more or less you didn't care. You're
Right,
like,
right. Yeah. Well, we didn't have any of the social media. We didn't have the technology. So we
no,
didn't know.
we
If
had
someone
no
was
idea.
having a party, 2 streets over and we weren't invited, we didn't know till after
No.
the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just as totally different. So this younger generation of not wanting in the mocktail world is huge,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
all these beer, I mean, these guys from Boston, they started Athletic Brewing. It has no alcohol in it. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, my husband's even started he likes having it and it has no alcohol. It tastes like beer. It's better than the O'Doul's. There's all different wines, all different champagnes. There's so many different options out there for people. But these drugs that now are legalized, the marijuana is laced with fentanyl, the
Yep.
drugs are laced with fentanyl,
Yep.
everything's laced with this stuff.
Yep.
And these kids don't have any idea what they're taking.
I went to it was with oh, it was, I forget what the name of them, but anyway, it was a federal government, and they put on this event for families, and it was families who lost their children to an overdose. And the guy that was talking said, your kids are victims of fraud, because what's happening with the generation Z's, I think they're the Z's, is that they go online and order drugs. They think they're getting an Adderall or a Xanax because it looks like that, but in fact, it's pure fentanyl, and it's being delivered to their homes. And so there was this one young girl, she was the valedictorian of her class, her high school, and her parents found her dead in the morning. And she took half the dose just to be safe, and it was all fentanyl, and it killed her. And they're finding it in vapes, but I think sometimes with vapes, people are putting it in themselves.
And it's well, and I mean, my son's roommate in Washington, D.C. My son had a roommate in Washington, D.C. who ended up that same thing happened. He went and he ordered something, had it delivered. He'd even ordered some for the next day, and he died of an overdose. These kids found him in the basement of their house. And it's different because alcohol, you can live a long time as an alcoholic.
Right. Yep.
Alcohol is the drug of your choice. I mean, how many people do we know get pickled? I mean, I remember growing up and be like, my grandmother lived to 93. Let's
Yeah.
face it. I mean, and she drank every night.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, I mean, she made a lot of people's lives miserable, but she wasn't going down. She wasn't dying. And today it's a totally different bag of wax. You're not watching your mom in a pretty dress having a party with her husband and sitting down for dinner like it was when I was growing up. Today, mom and dad are busy as anything. They have
Yep.
no time to even go to church. They can't barely afford to do what they need to do for their families.
Yep.
We're living in one of the scariest times ever.
Yeah.
And our president, has no idea where we are, what's going on, and all of our morals and ethics are gone. Like, nobody has morals. These kids aren't raised with knowing just the basics. Like, going to Sunday school, you would at least learn, okay, I can't do this. I know the 10 commandments. I can't do that. I can't do this. Even in Judaism, you learn things. And if you even go to a mosque, I think you learn things. I mean, but today the parents don't even have time to do it. And then the church might say, well, you have to give us tidings. And they're like, I can't afford to give you tidings.
Right.
I can't even
Right.
afford to give my kids dinner.
Right. Yeah, I grew up in a generation, and the baby boomers were going to church every Sunday as a family. And then you go after church and you're in your Sunday best. And then you go to your grandmother's for
Yeah.
dinner with all your cousins and aunts and uncles. And it was a family affair. And I think one of the things I noticed when my kids are 39 and 41 is around their generation, sports started happening on Sundays. And it started taking away. And then the stores started opening up on Sundays. And it started to take away from the family. And it just slowly, a little bit at a time, went away. And, I don't know how many families every Sunday get together anymore.
Well, it's interesting because I did hear one statistic from Ben Shapiro. I listen to Ben Shapiro a lot. And he said that people are going back. He's, a devout, he's Jewish, and he's, wears a yarmulke. He's not Hasidic, but he's a devout, Jewish person. And he is like, people are either totally into it or totally not into it. But I think that that's kind of like the missing link. And that's where the AA thing, I think, kind of got a bad rap in that it was, it was Christian based from day one, the Oxford group, right? It was always
Yeah.
Christian based. And I think that now it's people are like, oh, it's too much God, 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 God. And people don't want to believe in God. But you're like, but then where did this all come from?
Right. Interesting that you say that, because when my son got sober, he didn't believe in God, even though he was brought up Christian and went to a Catholic private school for high school. And so when he initially got sober, he put his mattress on the floor because he decided he was just going to roll out of bed onto his knees and start praying. And I said, but I thought you were an atheist. And he goes, well, I pray to dude. I said, all right, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You're believing in something greater than you. That's what matters, right?
But I think
Nobody
it's
believes
so
in God.
Well, and I think it's so interesting because I think when times get hard, right? When times
Mhm.
get really hard, people will be like, where's God? I know a lot of people who don't believe until the very end, right? You'll see older people that'll finally go, oh, I just got a bad thing. I better get in there. What am I going to do? I better pay my tidings up. I got to get to heaven. What's going to
Mhm.
happen to me? And I think that if we talk more about this, like how big and beautiful it is and not shaming, I love you use that word shame. I mean, when I first started doing all of my work, I actually patented sober, not ashamed, because I was sober and I had so much shame when I came into the rooms.
Yeah.
I was not, I didn't want to be what it looked like on TV, right? I didn't want to be, I even have a sibling that was like, Elizabeth, you're not an alcoholic. You don't jump on trains. You don't go hang out in the park with a bottle and a brown paper bag. I'm like, well, I don't even know if that's legal, to be honest, to jump on trains anymore. I don't even know if it's
Yeah,
possible,
right, right.
but that identifier of what it is to be an alcoholic, it's like it did have such a terrible connotation. And I tell people all the time, like me walking into that first meeting, which again, it's different today, was like the scariest thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
sure.
more scary than having babies,
Yeah,
buying homes, you
yeah.
know, getting cars, all these other big things that we do in life. But going into that meeting and raising my hand and saying who I really am,
Mm,
wow.
mm. And saying it out loud for the first time to a bunch of people you don't know what I am. Because I found
Humbling.
people would come in, the parents would come into my groups, Family Sharing Without Shame. And the first time they'd say, my name is so and I have a child who's addicted to drugs. And they would just cry. And I said, it's okay. It's the first time saying it out loud in front of a bunch of strangers. It's okay. We've all been there.
And unfortunately, people still feel like that. They don't want to talk about it. And, where, I grew up and I raised my kids in an area that's, a little affluent, right? So people they still have that shame that we talked about. Nobody wants to tell anybody. And this isn't going to happen in our neighborhood. And, when these kids are passing away, I will tell you that this boy that my son knew, they didn't put in the obituary that he died of an overdose. They said he had a heart attack. And my
Yeah.
son was like, Mom, why didn't they say that? And I'm like, because, honey, people still do not want to talk about it. And, for me coming out there and being transparent since day one has not been like always the best socially. Let's face it. I'm not invited to the parties I was invited to before. I don't hang out with the same girls I used to hang out with before. I'm different. I came out, I said who I am. And so that was really shaming, as you can imagine. But
Mhm.
I do it anyway. I got to do it anyway.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? My phone stopped ringing too when people found out I had a son who is addicted to heroin because that
Yeah.
was, that was so taboo and that's okay. The silence became very loud, but I did a lot of healing through those years and came out on the other side a much happier person, right?
Well, then you find out who your friends really are, unfortunately, but you do.
And what takes us down, just kind of catapults us into a place that, I mean, I'm sure you never expected to be doing a podcast called Busy Living Sober, years ago. And I never expected to be doing Sharing Without Shame. What happened to our lives organically and who we've become, a strong, resilient woman. And that's the beauty of all of this, right? That we've taken what was once our mess and we make it our message. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so for you, I mean, you're a health and wellness coach. How did that come about from?
Well, I will tell you that I've always been a searcher. I'm one of those people that's always searching. I'm always searching for answers and things. And why is this way? And why is it that way? And I think that, it's through the pain. It's what we do with our pain, that you were just talking about a second ago. It's, am I going to let this define me or is I'm going to let this catapult me? Yes, it's going to hurt for a minute if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're like in this place of, am I an alcoholic or what is going on with my child? And when you can really look in the mirror and go, this could be the end. This could be the end of my being ashamed of being in this rut. I can finally poke my head out like the flowers are going to do in the Northeast in a couple months
Mhm.
and say, you know what? This is who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask for help. that help is what gave me this life that's beyond my wildest dreams. And it's God always working in tandem with me. I mean, or actually, He's working in front of me, and I just finally go, oh, I see it now. That's where I'm supposed to go. And being open and aware and being able to make things quiet enough to see where I'm supposed to go next. It's interesting. I'm also I'm yoga certified. I went and got my yoga certification. I don't teach yoga, but I could now understand why they say these things that they say in the yoga class. And then I was like, you know what, this health and wellness thing I got to go figure this out. So I signed up for a course and I did it on Zoom. And the class, the teacher was actually over in Amsterdam. She's American. She was at Georgetown for a long time. And I studied with her, and I went over to Amsterdam, and I met her and stayed at her home and met her family. It was fabulous. And today, I don't coach that often, just to be completely transparent. The podcast is kind of taking its own. It's twice a week. It's Mondays. I have a guest. Every Wednesday, it's me by myself. Every Friday, I put out a newsletter. And every Thursday night, I make a Thursday on Facebook, and I make a non-alcoholic drink, and
Oh,
people
cool.
chime in, and it's called Thursday. I've been doing that on and off for years as well. And so that's what's taken over. But I'm always wanting to look. It's like I just took a class in the Kabbalah because I wanted to understand this Jewish mysticism kind of religion that it was. And I took Kabbalah 1 and learned about that. I was raised Irish Catholic. I raised my kids Episcopalian. I did something different for them just because when my kids were little was when all this priest stuff was going on. I'm like, not my boys. So, went to the Episcopal church, just to be completely honest. But, I'm always looking to see how I can better myself.
Mhm.
I play golf. I do that too. It's like I'm always looking at new avenues to keep myself busy living sober. I mean, my name's Elizabeth, but my brother could never say Elizabeth, so he called me Busy.
Oh,
Bizzy. So when I was 16, my dad put it on the car, whatever. And so my nickname's been Busy for a really long time. And that's why the podcast is called Busy Living Sober, because it's me living sober and having these adventures in my life. And it's kind of fun.
yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
The gifts that come, right? The
Oh,
gifts
the
that
gifts that come.
come.
I mean, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be the next Barbara Walters. For those of you who don't
Oh,
even know who she is, I mean, she passed away just recently. But
yeah.
when I was growing up, I mean, remember when they'd have the specials on right
Yeah.
after the Academy Awards? Now you couldn't catch me dead watching the Academy Awards, but back then it was a big deal, right? It was like, oh
Oh,
my gosh, we've got to get dressed. We have to watch this great show. Or before it, Barbara would interview all these celebrities, and I'd be like, that's what I want to do. And I
yeah.
have a degree in communication. So, it's kind of fun that I've made it all myself now. Now I have my own kind of channel. It's
That's awesome.
fun. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
So, one of the questions I did want to ask you, and kind of going back to, how did it, your habit of drinking turn into your addiction?
My drinking was not in a way that you would see like an addict that you see that uses heroin or other drugs, in that I needed it all the time, right? I
Hmm.
was a binge drinker. I would drink
Okay.
on the weekends. I was not a daily drinker. I was a weekend warrior who every time I drank, I got drunk. It fall down, get on the stage with the band, do all these crazy antics. But again, I wasn't a daily drinker. So I think that I always had the addiction. I think
Hmm.
that was, I mean, and I think that there's a lot of addictions in the world today. I think I mean, again, the cell phone's addictive, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
social media is addictive,
The computer.
food, the
Yeah.
computer, sugar, all these
Oh,
things are just, I could go on with, ad nauseum at what we can be addicted to.
yeah.
What I realized was at 37, I was divorced. I had 3 little kids. And, the last couple months of my drinking had gone to this next level that I hadn't ever been to before. And it scared me. And
Mm.
I had a gentleman come up to me. My sister had gotten married to a gentleman who was sober. So half the guests at the wedding were sober. And this really good looking guy came up to me the next day. My mother had a brunch at her house. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, you're an alcoholic. And I'm like,
Wow. Wow.
what? And hours later, I drove to the Jersey Shore And in the car, I was like, am I an alcoholic? Am I not an alcoholic? Am I an alcoholic? Am I not an alcoholic? Am I an alcoholic? Am I not an alcoholic? And I got to the beach and somebody said, do you want to drink? And I said, no, I'm not going to drink today. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, no. The next day, somebody said, do you want to drink? And I said, it was 4 o'clock. I'm like, well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world. I'll have a drink.
Right.
And I drank that night I was sitting on the end of the dock of the bay with a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of wine and a cell phone all by myself.
Hmm.
And I woke up the next day and I went for a run on the beach, which people who know me know I do not run unless someone's chasing me, which never really happens. But so I went on the beach and I fell to my knees and I said, God, please help me. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to
Hmm.
drink anymore. And that was my last drink.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you didn't go to treatment. Your pathway to recovery was just going
I
to
didn't have anybody to
AA.
take my 3 kids. Go to 28 days and go find yourself, Elizabeth. I don't think so. That was not happening. No.
Wow.
No, my mom took my kids so I could go to meetings, but there was
Wow.
but I took myself, I mean, I immersed myself in that program. It was like I don't know why. If you ask me if I go back to that time, I don't even know why. I
Hmm.
must have wanted it really badly because they said, go to a meeting every day, call me every day. That takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
You have to drive there, drive back,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I did it. I did every day. I went to a meeting every day for years.
So it sounds like, and I've always tell the parents this, we can't love our kids into recovery. When they hit their enough is when they'll find their pathway. Just like for parents, when I hit my enough, I stopped being the unhealthy helper.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard. And today, the treatment hasn't evolved, it hasn't evolved to the place where it's like we're dealing with, people that are addicted to heroin and are addicted to addicted to these, oxycodones and all these other are being mixed with people that are alcohol. I mean, that's we're comparing apples to grapefruits here. That we're not
Mm-hmm.
even the same family
Mm-hmm.
and we're treating them with the same sort of tools. And I think that it's different. It's not the same.
Well, I think there's a lot of treatment. There's more treatment for opioid addiction than there is for cannabis or alcohol. I have found that some people, the parents, when they're trying to get their loved one into treatment, if it's alcohol or cannabis, they're limited on the places they can find. But if it's an opioid addiction, it's much easier to get them into treatment.
Well, and and then they all go in together. And
Yeah,
then I always said it was like sending people to the land of misfit toys. If your kid hadn't tried it yet, then they're going to try this thing that they never even heard of. And I
yeah.
watched so many people that picked up things that they never would have picked up on if they hadn't learned it. It's just the whole system. I just feel like I wish we could get somebody to come in and just revise the whole thing. And I love that they are saying that cannabis doesn't hurt you and it's not addictive. Well, give me a break. It's a gateway drug. I mean, I believe that 110%. And we're dumbing down our society and they want us dumb.
And why do we have to be under the influence?
Right.
Why can't you just be abstinent of everything? But I have parents who, in my group, Family Sharing Without Shame, who their children are addicted to cannabis.
Oh, yeah. Of course they are.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
And they,
Of
and,
course.
and they don't know what to do because to get them into treatment is really, really difficult.
Right, because people say, well, it's not addictive. And you're
Right.
like, well, wait a minute. Then I mean, I remember looking at my kids when they tried, because my kids have all done everything, unfortunately. And I remember when they were smoking marijuana, and because I'd always had an open conversations with them about this, because I'm like, this is who I am. Your father is my ex-husband's been sober now 10 years. So, my kids are surrounded by recovery.
Yeah,
So we have to talk about this. Is this could happen to you? And
that's
if it
right.
does happen to you or happen to one of your friends, this is what we need to talk about. And that's where I think it starts is education. Is going, this is where this is going to take you. And one of my sons said to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm smoking weed. My grades are going down." And I said, "No joke. Why do you think they call it dope?" But see, nobody says those. It's like I mean, that's growing up. That's what it was. It was dope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because it wasn't like the kid that's the top of the class going to Harvard was like sitting there smoking dope all day long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unproductive. It gave you had no will to go out.
Yeah.
It's scary. I just think sometimes it's just a scary place we're in today. And I pray all the time.
It's so much more accepted,
Yeah.
as just, I don't really get it. I don't think it's legal in the state of New Hampshire
It's
yet.
not legal in Florida either. You need a
Yeah.
prescription. Yeah.
Yeah, you need a prescription, but they're working on it, they're definitely working on it.
Well, it's
Um,
all about money. It's just like the drug companies. It's all about money at the end of the day. If they sell the marijuana, they sell the alcohol. We think alcohol is good for you. And Jordan Peterson, I don't know if any of your listeners listen to Jordan Peterson, but this psychiatrist out of Canada, and he just came out and he said alcohol is the number one terrible thing for your brain. It is so bad for you. It kills so many brain cells, and people don't think about it. But when you put alcohol, a foreign thing, into your body, right? It's not healthy. Your body's not going, oh, that's a vegetable. I'm going to have that. Or it's a meat. It's a protein. It's poison. So your body the entire time is trying to fight it. Like, this is
mhm,
not good for you. This is not good for you. And you wonder why you get sick.
just about prescribed meds,
Right.
especially with our seniors. They don't even know that they're addicted because
No.
they're on so many oxys and Klonopins. And, when my mom was sick, the amount of medications in her apartment was astounding. And, I cleaned it all out. It's like not going to happen, because we'll be taking her to rehab, pretty
Exactly. It's
quick.
terrible. And you feel like, again, people believe that doctors are like, I remember growing up. I mean, I remember thinking that my doctor was like, oh, they're like the smartest, but they aren't taught anything about addiction or
No,
alcoholism.
no. And interesting because there was this woman who I met. My group was the first one to have a Narcan training for families in the state of New Hampshire.
Oh,
And there
that's
was
so
this
great.
big campaign that the state of New Hampshire had called Anyone, Anytime. And they had me representing families. They had this doctor and a person in recovery and a police officer. And the four of us, their faces were everywhere and all this stuff. But I asked the doctor, I said, when you were in medical school, what did they teach you about addiction? And she said, nothing. It was an elective. She said, I have 4 hours of an elective
Mhm.
on addiction. They teach
And
you.
how many people are going into our hospitals today with fentanyl overdoses and dying?
Oh, it's astounding.
It's a plane a day. A plane flying loaded with people crashing out of the sky every single I've heard of 3 people today.
Yeah. And it's interesting when my son was in active addiction, he got sober in 2008, and fentanyl really became big and people were overdosing it. There were people like dropping like flies. And I said to him, I am so grateful that fentanyl wasn't around when you were using. And he goes, are you kidding me? I love fentanyl. Shocked me. Just rocked my world. I was shocked that he was addicted to that too. Heroin and fentanyl.
Well, look at Michael Jackson. That's what took him down, and I think it might have taken down Prince. I mean, it takes down a lot of people. I think today it's just cut with different stuff that's going to kill you. The potency is, I mean, we have global terrorism coming over our border, but nobody wants to talk about it, but we do. And they're killing our society. They're killing Americans every day.
Yeah.
And, the biggest thing is to be able to talk about it and talk about our feelings and get to this place where, feelings aren't facts. They don't last forever.
Mhm.
We can be sad in this moment. I can miss my son desperately, but also be happy in the same moment for my other children. It's not all one thing. And I'm sure you felt the same way. It's like, you're sad for one of them, but you're also happy for the other, your other stuff that you have. And I believe that gratitude is by far the best attitude. And
Mhm.
the simplest things that we have, like to have eyesight, to have feet, to have legs, it starts with the basics. We
Right.
have food in our refrigerators. You have
Yeah.
heat in your home.
Yeah.
You have a warm bed. A lot
Mhm.
of people on this earth planet don't even have that.
Oh, when you look at the homelessness in our
Oh,
country, throughout our country, and with babies living in cars, and not everybody, it's not all because of drugs or
no, it's
alcohol.
not. No, it's
It's
because of
just
finances. I mean, how it's impossible. How do you afford? How do you afford when milk's, $10, whatever it is, a gallon of gas? I mean, right there, you're done.
Right.
You know? And
Yeah.
who's gonna babysit for your children? I mean, you can't run and do these things. It's become the family unit is disappearing. I'm gonna just whether or not anybody likes Trump or not, whatever, but I'm just gonna say, like he said, the one thing I remember him saying just recently was like these electric cars. You think you're gonna go on a family vacation in an electric car where you're stopping every 10 minutes? I don't think so. And
Mm-hmm.
plugging it in and keeping
Mm-hmm.
kids entertained. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's good. Like, are we proposing that people are going to go on family vacations or no? We're not going to anymore. You have to have an electric car where you're going to
Well,
kill
unless you
each
have
other.
money, people won't be able to afford it.
No, they aren't going to be able to afford it. I mean, I remember my parents loading us all in a station wagon and driving from St. Louis, Missouri to Florida and
Right.
having like, don't cross that line and touch me to one of my siblings.
Right.
And we did that. And
Yeah.
today it's like you can't even afford to go down the street to the grocery store. It's just something's got to change. Something's got to give. And I have hope that, something will change this year. I pray. I
Yeah.
have I have to put good energy into the universe and say the pendulum has to come back. It's gone
Right.
too far.
It certainly has. Yeah, it has. So we're coming to the end here. Is there anything, any words of wisdom or anything that you would like the listeners to know?
I just want people to know that, I'm not special by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, God, I feel special and that
Yeah,
God
you are.
blessed me with this gift, but I feel that anybody can do this. You
Mm.
can do this if you put your mind to it. It's
Hmm.
your mind. It's not what everybody around you thinks. It's what you believe in your heart. You can do whatever you want to do if you put your mind to it. And we think hard is hard. Like I think it would be hard to carry 2 bales of water up the Himalayan mountains to feed your children. That would be hard. I think
Right.
that'd be really hard. But this is making a change and sticking to it. And if you're an alcoholic and you don't have means to go to a treatment center, there are Zoom meetings that you can go to. You can go to a meeting in your neighborhood if you live in a city, and you don't even need anything but a willingness to walk in that door and say, "Hi, I'm da 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 da, and I need help." And you can do it and put your needs above everybody else's. Because if mom isn't healthy, nobody's healthy. If
Hmm.
the person that's in charge isn't healthy, no one is. Take care of you and be an example. And it's hard to tell your kids not to use drugs and not to drink if you're drinking and using drugs. It's
Right.
very hypocritical. I have to say that. I mean, with my kids, it was like, don't do this. And I'm not doing it. So guess what? Let me tell you, I will tell you where it's going to take you if you do it.
Hmm. And the sad thing is, nobody grows up and decides they want to be addicted to drugs or alcohol. If my son, I believe it's in his DNA, and he wanted to fit in, so he would try different stuff with, that the cool kids, so he said, that they were doing, and I call it the sleeping tiger. And he has, like, we're all born with this little tiger, and if we have a substance use disorder, the first time you inject or whatever, you wake that tiger up, so it's lying dormant, right? And eventually they switch places. And so until my son's tiger came out, he was the last one to find out he had a problem.
Yeah.
Everybody else around him knew what was going on, but to get him to understand was really difficult because he was lost in the bowels of his addiction.
Yeah, and people don't know, and you don't know till you know, and you can't make somebody ready. And you've mentioned that already today.
Yeah.
You can't make somebody ready. You
No.
can't will them to be ready. If I can say enough, like take care of you, like keep doing you, like go out and get your resources that you need to do to take care of you. It's got to be the balance. You got to exercise. You've got to eat healthy. You've got to have a group around you that's your source. And it can't be this person because it's just going to push them away even further. They
Hmm.
want to see you getting healthy and they're going to, because it's like kids and young people are like sponges always. It's
Hmm.
monkey see, monkey do.
Hmm.
Watch me. watch me. You want to see a healthy life? You want to see a non-healthy life? I mean, I know I know parents that took their kids into the inner city and said, you know what? If you keep doing this, this is where you're going.
Yeah.
Took them to morgues,
Yeah.
took them to
Yeah.
funerals of people they might not even know, and say, this is where it's taking you. This is not a joke. And for that kid, and having that open communication where you're really able to listen. Don't have a conversation with your kid with your cell phone in the room. Do
Mm-mm.
not throw it out. Have you all take it and put it outside. Have a time in at your home that you don't have any distractions, where people can feel safe and talk about their feelings
Mhm.
and not be judged. That's the biggest thing, is that life is so judgy right now. It's
Yeah.
so good or bad. There's nothing in between. And I believe life happens in the color, which is in between, you
Mm.
know?
Mhm.
And going and talking to them, get to know them. What
Yeah.
makes you tick?
Right.
It might not be what you really wanted them to make them tick. I can tell you that. Sometimes you're like, really? Okay. But you're willing because you
Mhm.
love them that much that you're like, I can see why, just being
Yeah.
open. It's just such a huge, huge gift. And giving your time.
Mhm.
Time is the biggest gift you can give your kids, and put that thing down.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Get present in the moment. That's where the gifts happen.
And I think sometimes, especially with teenagers, taking a ride, you can have some great conversations because they're not looking at you. Right?
Yeah,
They
it
don't
is. It's
look at
huge.
you.
And again, don't bring your cell phones. Don't, and maybe even let them handle the radio and have to listen to some music that you might not think is very sightly, or you don't like it towards your ears. But being able to be there is like, everybody wants to be loved at the end
Oh,
of the day.
well, isn't that the issue?
Yeah,
Isn't that the biggest issue? Addiction is about disconnection. Most people don't love themselves, and recovery is about connection.
exactly. And what's happened since COVID has been 60% of Americans are lonely.
Hmm.
60%. People
Yeah.
are isolated like never before. And we've got to take that time to just spend time with somebody. You might not belong to a church, but maybe go find a place that you can go. Go to a meetup, go to the app on Meetup. And if there's something you've
Yeah.
never tried I mean, you live in New Hampshire, go snowshoeing or something, you know, go try to do something that you normally wouldn't do that you thought would be fun. Try
Hmm.
get in a book club, something where you're getting, because we need each other.
Right.
But we don't need less of each other. We need more of each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we need to hear other people's opinions, and we need to be able to change and be like, okay, I hear you. Did you hear me? Okay, great. And we might disagree, but that doesn't mean there's something wrong with one or the other person. I mean, it's become so divisive right now that
Right.
if you believe this, then you're this. And it's like, you know what? We gotta hear each other. Cause if we don't, we're all in for it, I think,
Well, I mean, we used
unfortunately.
to be able to hear if you didn't agree with me, we could agree to disagree and we could talk about it and still walk away holding hands and being friends. But
Exactly.
that's not
But
so,
today it's not happened. I mean, I
people
don't
losing
have a lot of my
friendships.
friends. Oh, I lose a ton of friends for being who I am and being doing what I believe is true. For me, it's, and having those tough conversations. It's like, come on, you guys. I mean, this is the way I see it. But if I see it differently, does that mean we can't be friends? Come on, give me a
Right.
break.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes you just don't have those conversations. You just
Exactly.
talk about other things.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to ask too, because not every meeting is a good fit
No,
for people.
no.
And sometimes, correct me if I'm wrong, that people may have to try to go to different ones. So I'll give an example. Like my son didn't like NA, even though his drug of choice was heroin, and he would say that he was addicted to heroin and then alcohol. So he would identify as both, but I don't use the A words. I just don't like labeling people. But um, so and some of the meetings they look down on somebody because of what their drug is, especially the old timers. What's your suggestion about finding a meeting? How do you find a meeting that works for you, where you find your people?
Well, it's been so interesting because, again, I've been doing this a long time. And I recently, I haven't been going to, I haven't even been going to meetings recently. I've had a lot of hard time. I mean, the women are kind of tough and it's not the land of the healthy people. I mean, you got to put that out there. I mean, let's
Yeah.
face it,
Yeah.
it's not the healthiest group. If you find a group that you feel comfortable in, great. Is it going to last forever? No, nothing lasts forever. Nothing, things always change. Different people, different circumstances, different topics come up, those sort of things. And I don't think that everybody likes French food. I don't think everybody likes pasta. I don't think everybody likes burgers or hot dogs. That's just like going to the meetings. You've got to find what works for you. And if it
Right.
only works for a little bit or you get offended, don't let one thing put you down. You're there for the message, not for the people that are there. Okay.
That's right.
You're
Yeah.
going to hear a message. And if you don't even talk to anybody and you just bail and you run away, at least you got something out of it. That's all that matters. If you're
Hmm.
not drunk or you're not using, that, my friend, is what's important. And how
Yeah.
you get there today, there's so many different ways, and I don't poo poo any of them. I mean, right now they're finding that this Ozempic, I don't know if you know this, but this Ozempic, the diet shot is going to maybe help people get off drugs because
Oh.
it takes away the craving. This is the
Oh.
newest thing. I'm getting some people on from the University of Pennsylvania to come on and talk about it that have done some tests about it. But if this happens, it's going to be a game changer.
Huge.
Game changer.
Huge.
Game changer. So, I mean, there's things that are happening all the time to help save our society. But
Mm.
if you're out there and you're feeling alone, go to a meeting. If you don't like it, try another one. Maybe you'll
Yeah.
meet some friends. You
Yeah.
know, I just said that to one of the people that I help. I said, go out, go to a meeting, go see if there's go make somebody to go to coffee with.
Well, and there's also recovery centers throughout, I know throughout New Hampshire, and I'm pretty sure throughout our country, we have, I think, 21 or 22 recovery community centers throughout New Hampshire, which is a drop-in center that you
Yeah.
can just drop in and talk to a recovery coach and, maybe find that connection that you're looking for. You just never know, but you have to
You
show up.
You have to show up and you have to want the help and you have to realize that your ego is going to tell you, you got this. I don't need any help. I don't need any help. But our ego lies to us.
Oh,
I mean, I
absolutely.
love the acronym easing God out because you know what? If we can go and be ourselves, our transparent selves, just, I don't want to say naked because nobody's going to show up naked. But if you go and you show up and accepting who you are and tell the truth, if we tell the truth of who we really are, somebody's going to help you and someone is going to want to be your friend. There is no question. There
Yeah.
is no question.
Yeah. It's just being authentic.
Yep, just be you. God
Right.
only made one you. Love
That's right.
yourself. Fall in love with yourself. It took me a long time, but I finally got there. So
Yeah.
don't ever give up hope. Ever, ever,
Awesome.
ever.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It
This
was
was
so great
great.
meeting you. It was
It was great
awesome.
to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the Sharing Without Shame podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. If you're in need of emotional support, Donna offers private sessions. For more information about Donna and the services she offers, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com or email her at donna4support@comcast.net. Nothing in the Sharing Without Shame podcast is intended to establish a therapist-patient relationship or intended to replace the services of a trained therapist, doctor, or health professional, or substitute for professional mental health, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Until next time, may your faith and strength heal your heart.